Well, I think I've told you before, but our friend David Menzies is in Mexico. He has caught up with the migrant caravan that is inexorably making its way to the U.S. border, and he joins us now live via Skype. David, can you hear me?
I can, Ezra. It's a pretty bad internet connection where we are, so I hope we don't lose each other, but if we do, don't take it personally.
Okay. Well, I saw your first video that you're on the scene. I understand you had to drive a while to catch up with the caravan. We'll see all your reports at caravanreports.com, but tell me a little bit about what it's like. I mean, is it really 5,000 plus people? Is it men, women, children, mainly men? How does it even work moving that big of a flock down a highway?
Well, Ezra, in regard to the demographics, I would say it's easily 85% young men under 35, 30. There are indeed some women, there are some children, and there are some infants in diapers as well here. And, you know, it is a really arduous journey. There's no doubt about it. It must be in the mid-30s where we are right now. We just had a torrential downpour. And as for numbers, we were talking to some Mexican human rights people off camera last night. They said it peaked at around 7,000. They suspect it's about 5,000 right now. It's really impossible to get an accurate number on such a moving target, but it is definitely in the thousands, Ezra.
When you say mid-30s, that's degrees Celsius, so it's almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. How do people, like, are people in trucks or buses? Where do they sleep at night? I mean, you're going through towns and villages. How do they eat? How do they sleep? How do they go to the bathroom? I'm curious about the logistics because I have trouble believing this is a natural, organic movement. My suspicion is that it's being professionally organized. Can you speak to any of these logistical issues? Can you see any organizers?
Well, Ezra, on the question of, since you raised going to the bathroom, there is definitely an organization at play here in terms of we came across the municipal city in the town we were staying last night, and there were dozens and dozens and dozens of porta potties. In fact, on the highway towards there, we saw some flatbed trucks with those porta potties, and it never clicked in. Oh, of course, that's not for a concert that's happening. That's for the migrants and the migrant caravan. When it comes to trying to find anybody on the ground, in terms of, are you an organizer? Where's the money coming from? Are you getting paid? And I'm talking even the people with bullhorns barking orders, Ezra. You just get absolutely the Sergeant Schultz routine. I know nothing. I saw nothing. And it's but clearly there is some money and there is some organization behind this. As for sleeping arrangements, it's a mixture, Ezra. There's people that carry their own tents with them. As we saw last night, there were people looking at clothes stores, auto mechanic shops, finding anything with an awning, which was a good idea because there was a torrential downpour, and they just sleep there. And what I equate it to, it's like, imagine being in your city or your town, anywhere you live in Canada, and overnight more than 5,000 homeless people descend and just camp out. And you can imagine, you know, the kind of mess you're going to run into, and even to that fact, the danger. We wanted to embed ourselves last night with the crowd, but under the cover of the darkness, the authorities we spoke to said that would not be a very good idea at all.
Oh, now you said that the vast majority of these migrants are young men under the age of 35 or even under the age of 30. Do they seem to come from a particular background? I saw some other footage. They had backpacks. They looked almost like they had some sort of training. Almost, I don't know if it was Antifa style training or paramilitary, or they're just young guys looking for an economic opportunity. Can you describe it all? I know your cameraman speaks Spanish, and you've been able to obviously talk to those who know any English. What have you been able to find out about these young men themselves?
Well, they all sing from the same song sheet in that regard, Ezra, that they are in such a terrible economic plight. Primarily, the migrants are from Honduras, but from Guatemala and El Salvador, too. And they're merely trying to, better their lives, which is understandable by going to the United States. However, when you ask them, what about applying, to immigrate legally, it is always the same answer. It takes too long and it costs too much. And Ezra, I think that's a big problem here, because if this 5,000 plus flotilla of migrants in this caravan is allowed into the U.S., what does it say to all those thousands and thousands of immigrants trying to immigrate legally into the U.S., spending years in some cases, spending thousands of dollars on immigration lawyer fees? What does it say to them if the reality on the ground is, hey, hop a fence, come in illegally? So it would be a terrible precedent. And you can see why President Donald Trump is mobilizing the military on the border and not allowing this to happen.
Yeah. So you mentioned they're all seeking economic opportunity. I think that's pretty obvious. But just to be clear on that point, none of them are claiming that they're actual refugees fleeing from danger. They're just looking to get rich, I suppose. But no one here is claiming that they're being persecuted or because of their race or religion or anything that's traditionally countries give asylum to refugees for.
Indeed, Ezra. And I think one of the appalling narratives I've seen in some media outlets is comparing this migrant caravan to the plight of the St. Louis, the ship that was full of Jews fleeing Nazi Germany in 1939 that sought refuge in Canada when there was a liberal prime minister in Canada at the time, and in the U.S. when there was a Democrat in power as the president. And they were told no, they had to sail back. And hundreds of those Jews, of course, ended up dead once they got back to Germany. This is not the same issue. Those Jews were not seeking greener economic pastures. They were literally fleeing for their lives. And that was proven by the fact that so many had to pay with their lives when they were sent back. These people, and don't get me wrong, I mean, when you see the poverty in Central America, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's very hard to better yourself here, but it is all about economic enrichment. And apparently it's, the mindset, Ezra, is that it takes too long, it's too expensive, and it's not a sure thing. If we apply legally, let's hop the fence, roll the dice, and find out what happens once we're in the U.S. illegally.
Can I ask you, do you see any other journalists there? I suspect you're the only Canadian journalist there. Do you see American journalists? Do you see European journalists? Is it just too big a group for you to detect the other journalists? Are there any other English speakers? Tell me who else is there.
Yes, we've encountered some journalists. There was a camera crew from San Diego. They were here. There was a freelancer, I assume, for Der Spiegel in Germany. We bumped into him a couple of hours. There was a woman from Japan who lives here. She was covering it for the Japanese media. And I have not seen any Canadian media here. That is for sure. And, speaking of media, Ezra, it's very funny to see how this is being spun in some circles. I filed a quick hit about, you might have seen it a few days ago, The Guardian came out and reported that one of the real drivers behind this exodus is climate change. And they base this on a couple of farmers who, because of bad weather for the last couple of seasons, have lost their crops. Well, since the inception of farming, farmers have had to endure with bad weather bringing about crop failure. So I just found it, perversely humorous that the Guardian was saying, not this might be a factor, but this is a big reason. This is maybe the reason why these migrants are moving north, climate change. And then again, Ezra, if you even buy into that narrative, well, aren't we being told by the climate hucksters that climate change affects the entire planet? From the South Pole to the North Pole. So how is running off to Texas or Arizona or Utah or wherever going to escape the nemesis that plagues the planet known as climate change.
Yeah, it's a pretty ridiculous explanation. Now, I remember when this caravan got going, and I think you're with the first caravan. There's a second caravan, and today I see news of a third caravan forming. I remember Donald Trump tweeted that he expects the Mexican government and other Latin American governments, Central American governments, to stop this caravan, or he will punish them by removing foreign aid. I thought it was very dramatic language, but obviously it hasn't done the job. I know there was some Mexican military at a border, but they gave way. Can you tell me if you see any evidence of Mexican military or Mexican police or any authorities trying to stop this, or are they actually assisting it?
Well, that's a good point, Ezra. Just an hour ago, as a matter of fact, we were passing by a transport truck, loaded to the brim with the migrants, and they passed a checkpoint of the federal police, the Mexican federal police, and they waved at the police, and the police waved back. And it looks like Mexico is pursuing deterring the caravan with the carrot rather than the stick. And by that I say they've made offers to the migrants. If you end this now, we will give you a job. We will give you health care. We will give you shelter. And about an estimated 2,000 have taken advantage of it. That's why the numbers have dropped. But there are reports that this is a ruse, that the Mexicans are or will be deporting these people back to their home countries. And certainly with the Mexicans we've spoken to in certain communities, they're upset by this because there is unemployment here, and they're saying, look, I'm a law-abiding Mexican trying to get ahead, trying to get a good job. How is it that we have jobs all of a sudden for people from Honduras? And then again, Ezra, about 2 hours ago, we saw something really remarkable. We were passing through the town of Aguilera, and it was almost surreal. It was like the Mardi Gras parade in reverse. The people from the town of Aguilera came out and they lined the highway. And as the trucks came by loaded with migrants, they were throwing food, bottles of water, items of clothing. Like I say Mardi Gras in reverse, because usually when you see the Mardi Gras floats, the people on the floats are throwing, trinkets and trash to the people lining the parade route. But this was the opposite. And they were cheering them on. It was very much a carnival-like atmosphere. And this was a pretty, poor town by the looks of things. I think, from the people I spoke to there, Ezra, this is kind of the Mexicans giving the middle finger to Trump that, you've said some things about us. You want to build the wall. Well, guess what? Look at this guest list of 5,000 we're sending your way. Good luck with it.
Isn't that interesting? So rather than regarding these transient migrants as a nuisance or as even an invader, they think, go, you keep going, you stick it to Trump, and you're representing us. That sounds like what you described in that town of Aguilera.
Yes, that's certainly what happened. Whereas the town we were in last night, we noticed that there were cab companies that were giving the migrants a free ride out of town. And at first I thought, wow, again, a pretty, downtrodden, impoverished place. Why such altruism? And then I was quickly corrected, Ezra. It's not really charity here. It's let's get this problem out of our town, hunt it down the field, so to speak, so somebody else has to deal with it, because clearly we don't have the resources and the infrastructure to deal with this mini invasion of 5,000 people. And by the way, when I say invasion, Ezra, that again, especially the people on the left, is a loaded word. But the way I look at it is that if you have at one point 7,000 uninvited guests breaking the law, coming to your country to go over the border illegally, is that not the textbook definition of invasion, even though these people aren't packing weapons?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about that, because Donald Trump said that at least in the second wave, maybe he was referring to the first one, there were some bad hombres. There were some criminals. We saw a statement by a Latin American political leader that there were some ISIS terrorists detained. I don't know much about that report. Have you seen anyone who looks like a gang member, the characteristic MS-13 face tattoos? Have you seen anyone wearing a bandana, anyone holding a weapon, even if it's just a knife or a Molotov cocktail? I saw one clip on Twitter. Have you seen anyone who looks aggressive or even like a gang?
I have to admit, Ezra, I have not seen that. I've certainly not seen anybody that is Middle Eastern in nature, because there were those kind of reports of ISIS people being embedded. I haven't seen any weapons. I haven't seen any of their paraphernalia associated with MS-13. But I have to tell you, when I speak to the locals here, they tell me that the organized crime syndicates in Mexico, especially the ones that run illicit border trade of illegal drugs and prostitution and whatnot, they're not happy, because when you think about it, Ezra, this is kind of bad for their business in two regards. One is the impending border clampdown. It's going to be so much harder to smuggle the bad stuff into the U.S. when the U.S. military is active. And secondly, a coyote operation. These are the guys that transport illegals. You're looking at $5,000 to $7,000. That's a fortune for somebody from Honduras, probably at least 2 years' salary. And these are the guys that, jerry-rig a truck to get you across the border. So in that respect, too, they don't like what's happening. So it kind of an interesting sidebar in terms of the bad guy element.
Yeah. Well, you've been, I'm glad your cell phone connection is held up here. I just have one more question. It goes back to something you said right at the beginning. You said there's guys with bullhorns directing things. You saw the trucks pulling all those portable toilets. So there's obviously someone doing logistical planning the route, shepherding people. It's obvious. I mean, you just don't have 5,000 people moving just for food, water, medicine, accommodations alone. It just doesn't happen. Have you been able to detect at all how these 5,000 people were chosen, where they come from, if there's anything that binds them or unites them? Are they communicating? I heard that there was a lot of communications on an app that's popular in not so popular in North America, but WhatsApp is the name of the app. It's owned by Facebook, that is popular in Latin America. That's how people are organized, through WhatsApp groups. And most of the planning is done sort of under the radar that the media can't see. Have you heard anything about how these people were picked, how they coordinated, how they're paid? I assume some of these people are making money on the trip alone, even just to pay for their incidentals. Have you ever been able to detect any of these things, David?
Not yet, Ezra. It's of course the key question to everyone I speak to. Where's the money coming from? Who's organizing this? Who's managing this? They all say they don't know. They all infer or imply that it's very much an organic thing. I can tell you that, from the research I did before leaving Canada, it seems that there was an individual, Bartolo Fuentes, a Honduran ex-lawmaker, who was helping a group to do this caravan, and local Honduran media reported erroneously, at least according to Mr. Fuentes, that join this group and you're going to be getting benefits, and something that was expected to be about two. Again, is that true? I don't know. It's something that is being, but connecting the dots in terms of the money behind it and who's behind it. And also, Ezra, the theory of, when you look at the timing, it's just before the U.S. mid-elections for Tuesday. And in that regard, if this was meant to be a political embarrassment for Donald Trump, I might argue the opposite's happening here, Ezra. If there was a Pew Research poll, and it showed that 73% of Republicans, of people who identify as Republican, vote Republican, 73% consider illegal immigration, a hot top issue, whereas the figure for those who vote Democrat, it's only 19%. I think images of these thousands of people heading towards the U.S. border saying, we don't care what Mexico's offering. We don't care if you're putting the military there. We're coming, like it or not. I think for Tuesday, this is something that'll mobilize the vote for the Republican Party. So if this was meant to cause embarrassment, to be a political albatross for Donald Trump, I think it has the potential to do the precise opposite, Ezra.
I don't want to flog a dead horse, and you've been generous with your time. I just have one last question. You mentioned people with bullhorns. I don't have a bullhorn.
Yes.
I don't know anyone in real life who has a bullhorn. That's a specific tool that an organizer would have. And frankly, if you're in Honduras or El Salvador, you're not going to spend $30 on a bullhorn. So that's someone who is organized and had some money. That's not a normal thing to have. Those people are obviously of a higher level, an organizer. They wouldn't be someone who's just swept up or said, well, I heard a promise. Have you been able to communicate at all with those obvious ringleaders, those obvious, someone with a bullhorn, someone giving instructions? Are any of them transparent at all? Do any of them talk to you in any way?
Well, as a matter of fact, Ezra, last night at a hotel where we stayed at, there was a dining room, and we were told off camera by an official, a Mexican official, that the table of 3 people eating dinner, you might want to talk to them because she identified them as organizers. We knew they wouldn't come on camera with us, so we went over with the hidden camera, which we will upload later. And I got to speaking with them on a casual basis, but again, they stuck to their script that the only one at the table that spoke English was the lady who is a indigenous Mexican. And she said, this is just an organic thing that I'm paraphrasing right now. But and also she said, I found this really fascinating, Ezra, because I said, these people are committing a crime, figuratively and literally, by walking over Mexican sovereignty as they make this march to the U.S. And she said something I thought that was preposterous, which was, it's not really a crime to come into Mexico, without papers, right? And I thought, well, wait a minute. I've been to Mexico. This is my 4th time. I'm not getting into the country without a passport. And as a matter of fact, Ezra, just flying down here, we were held over. I was personally held up for extra security screening in Mexico City for the connecting flight, so much so that I missed my connecting flight, and I had to pay $440 US to get on the next flight out. So it's a really interesting dynamic that, according to her, Mexico, it's a happy place. You don't need any kind of thing like a passport or ID. You can walk in all the way to the U.S. if you want. And meanwhile, somebody legally flying from Canada, I get scrutinized to the nth degree. Bizarre.
Well, obviously, we'll cover that $440 expense for you. We're crowdfunding this whole trip, David. We're grateful for you going down there. We've got you. We've got your cameraman, Efron, who speaks Spanish and is doing a great job, the two of you. You have a driver there, which is important because you want to make sure you don't go down the wrong place. So we do have expenses, several $1,000s, and now the extra $440, that's fine. If folks want to chip in and see your other reports, it's a little bit better camera. You're talking to us via cell phone now, so it's a little blurry, but your other reports are in high def. People can see all your reports at caravanreports, plural.com. And if people feel compelled or moved to chip in, whether it's $50 or $100 or even $5 to help cover your costs, I'd be grateful, and I know you would too. I guess my last word to you would be stay safe, my friend, and film as much as you can, and we look forward to your return. And I think you're doing important news. I know you're telling the other side of the story and asking questions that the mainstream media won't. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.